everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Can't keep me waiting that long. It's a noon game this week. We don't have the extra 7.5 hours for a primetime game. Gotta keep the shows moving this week. We got to be there early on Saturday.
Oh man, last week I wanted to be there early, and now this week it's like, well, be careful what you ask for, and we will have to be there early. But that's okay because it's a Saturday morning. Where else would you rather be? I'm just hoping the weather is a little more compliant this time. Now I don't know what it looks like now, but this time a week ago the weather looked fantastic, so I don't even know what the point is of me asking if you know what the weather is going to be on Saturday, because you know what, Tom, you lied to us last time. You're gonna lie to us again today.
That's what I get for going to 0 meteorology classes in college. I don't think Ohio State even offers a meteorology degree. I don't think so. Yes, that's on me. I apologize. Current forecast, according to the Apple Weather app, which is constantly wrong, is 80 degrees, high of 80, and cloudy. But I'm currently working my... Yes, the Weather Channel app says high of 80 degrees and partly cloudy. So if you want to take a little more optimistic view, you can listen to... who's that? Mike Bettis on the Weather Channel. So there you go.
Columbus native.
He personally guaranteed it to me. Columbus native. Former Columbus TV anchor, weather anchor. He personally guaranteed it. So if that's not exactly right, you'll have to take it up with him, not me.
Yeah, if it's not right, I'll be like, do you even doppel, bro?
Sounds like you need to upgrade to a Doppler 7000 from a 6000, because the current one, trash.
Out of date. So we talked with Ryan Day and safeties coach Perry Eliano and quarterback CJ Stroud on Tuesday to find out what's going on. Hey man, what's going on? And Ryan Day provided some updates in a way that Ryan Day does, which is to say, hoping to get him back soon. And so he was asked about Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and don't know if he'll practice this week. They want to get him back as quickly as possible, but they're obviously not going to rush him. All of the things that Ryan Day said and all of the ways that he said it tells me, like, I don't expect Jaxon Smith-Njigba to play this week. And I think, Tom, that was pretty much our sense after the game as well, during the post game. Like, there's no reason to play Jaxon Smith-Njigba against Arkansas State. I can argue that there's a reason to play him against Toledo a little bit to get the timing down, because we saw what kind of timing issues there were against Notre Dame. I don't think you need to force him out there against Arkansas State, but it might be good to get him for a few snaps against Toledo, assuming he's not just 100% ready to go by then. I think I would be surprised if he plays on Saturday.
I would be very surprised if he played on Saturday, and I would have told you that, and I probably did tell you that after the game on Saturday. And then, Ryan Day always wants to be very, roundabout about how he talks about people and their injuries and their timeline to return. It's just basically like he will confirm that they are alive. And anything past that is like, well, we'll just kind of have to see. The availability report will be out 2 hours before the game, so you'll find out then if he continues to be alive, and if so, by how much. And I think, a lot of times you'll just sort of like indirectly sort of figure out or get, confirmation of what you're sort of thinking. We got that when CJ Stroud was up there. He was asked about, Jaxon Smith-Njigba going out early in the Notre Dame game. And, talked about how tough it was after all the work he put in and all that. And, how Notre Dame later in the game was running coverages that were like exactly what they were looking for. They had a plan to get the ball to Jaxon Smith-Njigba if they saw this exact coverage and he wasn't in the game. And, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, we won, was one of his quotes. And then he said, he'll be good to go in the next couple of weeks. And I was like, yep, there's your timeline. So next couple of weeks is either Toledo or Wisconsin. So I don't think we learned anything there, because I think that's what we were all assuming. But, I think that's further confirmation of what we had suspected pretty much all along.
I think if you ask Ryan Day for proof of life, he will give you a picture, and then you're like, but I need today's newspaper. And he's like, no newspaper. You'll just get this picture. This is all you'll get. I thought it was interesting. One of the reporters asked, hey, Ryan, can you at least tell us what it is with Jaxon Smith-Njigba, what the injury is? Like, no, I don't want to do that because I do that with him, then I'll have to do that with everybody. And then he goes through and explains his long-held rule on not talking about injuries. And then we talk with CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud is talking about, he's like, yeah, man, hamstrings are nothing to mess with. And it's like Ryan Day's probably in the, back in his office, like, what the heck, man? And then go ahead.
It's like the some of those World War II propaganda posters, which is, like warning you about, not talking in front of, not talking about your mission in public because you never know who's listening. It's like, I think CJ Stroud knew who was listening and just is probably not quite as militant about that stuff as Ryan Day. Again, like, I don't think this was a real big surprise that the guy who was grabbing at his hamstring during the game was, in fact, nursing a hamstring situation. Holly Rowe, I believe, reported that on the game. So, yeah, not exactly top secret stuff here. But again, this is just sort of further confirmation of what we basically thought already.
And then starting center Luke Wypler was seen wearing a boot at the end of the game. CJ Stroud, medical professional, mentioned that Luke had been playing through an injury the entire game, and so like I would expect, there's no real, it's nothing serious. I mean, serious enough to be wearing a boot, but in a big game like Notre Dame, we need you out there. It's a season opener. We can't go with a new center, Luke. We need you out there, type of thing. And Luke is probably like, you don't need to tell me. Like, I want to be out there. I'm going to be out there. But now Arkansas State, yes, you need to remain high and the competitive excellence that you need. You can't have any letdowns, but you also need him ready to go against Wisconsin. And so is this a situation where he maybe doesn't play this week and then you go with Matt Jones or Jacob James, and they still haven't, Ryan Day wasn't letting us know exactly who that would be if they chose to do that. But another guy that I would would not be surprised if he doesn't go this week. That's one
that just feels to me a lot like the CJ Stroud thing from last year for the Akron game, where he's playing and you knew he wasn't 100% and he's still in there. And then you get to the game where they're favored by 56 points or whatever it was against Akron last year. And it was like, why don't you just go ahead and sit this one out and we'll see you next week. This is going to be, again, we're just guessing right now. We are just speculating. This is not us reporting. This is definitely a fact. But I would be extremely surprised if we saw Luke Wypler on the field on Saturday, because why would you? Like, this is a great opportunity to give Matt Jones a start at center. Again, they have not said that this is what they're going to do, but go ahead and give Matt Jones a start at center, and then Matt Jones will have a whole game of snapping the ball to CJ Stroud just in case you need him to do that again later in the year. It gives Enoch Vamahi a chance to play guard if that's what they choose to do. He seems like he's probably the sixth offensive lineman right now. So, does he kick in at that guard spot for Matt Jones? That's just, that's an opportunity to get two guys, some new experience, game experience, kind of live fire situation in a very low risk kind of environment. And, if there's any issue, we can talk later about Ryan Day talking about the motivation for this game. And, is this kind of one you just kind of put on cruise control? If you've got guys who are starting in new spots or starting for the first time this season, in Vamahi's case, like that seems like something that will, I don't think he's going to have it on cruise control in his, I don't know if that would be a first career start. It might be. I don't remember if he started in Michigan State 2 years ago, but, that just kind of gives you an extra opportunity to have someone who's a little more focused and, will be super engaged in that game, just because, hey, this is not a routine thing for him.
This feels to me like if when college football goes to the expanded playoffs, this would just be a natural time, even if Luke Wypler was healthy, to sit him and let Matt Jones come in and be center for a game where if you're going to be playing 16 games, you might want to get some of these backups legitimate playing time, and in so doing give starters a game of rest or something like that. So I think that makes all the sense in the world to sit Luke Wypler, assuming he's, if he's 100%, then you play him. But all of the good that can come from playing everybody else, I think it would be very valuable, and it would just give everybody that extra game of experience and that thing that they can rely back on if they're faced in a situation later on down the road, because it's really hard for an offensive line to stay healthy all the way through the Big Ten. And I think that would be, I think it makes sense to bring the other guys in and rely on them in this one. The last guy I want to mention, Tom, Julian Fleming, junior receiver, close to going. They held him back. Ryan Day said it tore out Julian Fleming's heart to not play out there, but it sounds like he should be back this week, and so we will expect him. However, the last 2 times we were about to see him, it was like pregame stuff that kind of held him out. And I don't know that this was necessarily pregame, but week of things that held him out. And I know if they don't have Jaxon, which we're not expecting, I think getting Julian back would be a nice bonus and maybe allow Emeka to be in the slot the entire time and work with, Xavier Johnson switching back and forth, but it might get them more closer to normalcy.
You feel so bad for Julian Fleming. He's someone who it feels like just perpetually has been a game time decision and then just, doesn't play. Oh, the field is wet at Indiana last year, or they're worried that he might tweak something, or he tweaks something in warm-ups, or he tweaks something in Thursday or Friday practice. I feel like there's 4 or 5 games where we've, thought on Wednesday we would see him playing, and he's practicing on Wednesday and walking off the field when we do interviews in the Woody on Wednesday, and then he's not playing on that weekend just because of some very minor tweak. And they're trying to be cautious with him because they don't want to have this minor thing turn into a bigger thing, which makes a ton of sense, and I'm sure deep down he understands and appreciates, but man, that has to be really tough. So you wonder, it would be great for him to be able to play this weekend, because then you have 3 of your guys who you sort of came into fall camp with thinking of as sort of starters. You're not going to have Jaxon Smith-Njigba probably, but you'd have Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka in the slot, like you said, and then Fleming on the outside. And if he's healthy and they're comfortable with him going, that would give them 3 guys who you're starting to build more rapport, build more rhythm with CJ Stroud, which would obviously be a very good thing, and just let him get out there and just start getting more reps, because you've seen him play, and when he's played, he has made plays. He scored a touchdown against Michigan State last year. He had a couple nice catches in the Rose Bowl last year. He just has to be healthy enough to play. So you would hope that he'd be able to be out there playing this week, but again, at this point, I don't assume anything, because you never know. He may be another game time decision when that availability report comes out on Saturday.
For that, Tom, I want to move to the defensive side of things with Ohio State really dominating that game. The 2 scores that they gave up were almost a direct result of 2 fluke pass completions, and you eliminate those, and Ohio State probably pitches a shutout, but obviously the plays happen, so you put them out there. However, I have to ask you a question which allows me to have a title for this show, and that question is, was this defensive performance fool's gold? And I say that because Notre Dame had all of 49 snaps, and it was with a new starting quarterback, and you were down a starting offensive lineman. It's not the greatest skill that we've seen, and it's not the greatest skill that Ohio State will see. Notre Dame's starting receiver, their leading receiver, one of their top receivers, is a 5th-year senior former walk-on. Now, I'm not saying anything about that because we saw one for Ohio State score. So, talk about Ohio State's great receiving core. They had a 5th-year senior former walk-on catch a touchdown, but they didn't have Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka and Jaden Ballard around him as well. And I don't think the talent on hand at Notre Dame is as good as we're going to see. This might be less skill talent than we're going to see against Wisconsin. And that's including receivers, and that's including tight ends. Not that Michael Mayer isn't great, but I'm just saying we liked what we saw. But Tom, I'm going to ask you again, is there a chance, is there a possibility, was maybe this defensive performance from the Silver Bullets fool's gold?
First of all, let me just say I love the idea of specifically asking a question for a show title purpose. So the next time I have you on the morning show, I'm going to be like, who are 6 Buckeyes who every fan is about to know? Like, just, man, that's going to be great. I will and then I just take the rest of the show off. I can't wait. That is fantastic. Hey, I need to have you on the morning show later. I'll talk about a topic with you a little later on after we're done recording this one. Anyway.
Cool.
So, Tony, so my understanding is you wanted to know whether this defensive performance was fool's gold for the Buckeye defense. That's my understanding. So my answer is I don't think so. And, one of the reasons is how many teams are they going to play this season who have substantially better skill talent than what Notre Dame had? I mean, if you want to talk about Wisconsin being in the neighborhood, like, okay. If you want to talk about Penn State, tell me who's playing quarterback for them at that point of the season, because that might impact my answer there. Michigan, I think, is the only clear answer. Michigan State didn't look great against Western Michigan, I think they played. One of those directional Michigans, I think it was Western. They didn't look great. I wasn't overwhelmed with them. And it's week 1, so you don't want to read too much into it. But I don't know, there is not a 2020 Alabama on this schedule, at least until they get to literally Alabama potentially in the playoffs. And, Georgia, I think Georgia was... I go back and forth on exactly how much of the Georgia-Oregon game was Georgia and how much of the game was Oregon, but I don't think that Oregon defense is very good. So we'll see. But I think the point is you're not going to bump into like significantly better defensive or offensive skill talent in the next month and a half, probably. So you've got some time to maybe get some stuff squared away by the time, I guess, month potentially for Michigan State. You got some time to get some stuff squared away. And, also, this defense is probably going to get better as the year moves along. Guys get more comfortable in their roles. I don't think Denzel Burke had a great game week 1. He was okay, he was solid, but it was not like a dominating performance from Denzel Burke. What is a safety rotation going to look like later in the year? And will they have different guys who they're matching up with different styles of offense? Like, I don't think it was fool's gold just because it was so consistent. And once, we talked about this on the show yesterday, that Notre Dame's last points of the game were scored with like 11 minutes and 50-something seconds left in the second quarter. So you basically went almost 3 full quarters not giving up a point. And it wasn't like Notre Dame was constantly in the red zone and just threatening to turn the ball over. That, it's not incredible skill talent, and we talked about that a bunch last week. But, Lorenzo Styles is a good receiver. You saw him make some plays. And you can't completely just write it off like, well, yes, they have good players, but, they're not that great. Because they really shut Notre Dame down. Was it 72 yards in the second half? I don't think this is going to be, this does not automatically make them the 1985 Bears. But it does feel like that felt like a real performance. That did not feel like a mirage to me. Did it to you? Because you're asking, so I assume the answer is yes, that you think they're frauds. Is that what you think?
Tom, I'm not the hater here. You are the resident hater. That is your job.
Now the show title is Are the Ohio State defense all frauds? There you go. That's going to be great.
No, we're going to split this up into 2 shows with 2 different titles, both trying to be as clickbaity as the next. No, I the positives certainly outweigh any of the negatives. And again, I don't think it was a fluke at all because the guys were where they were supposed to be. And this was, as Ryan Day and Perry Eliano kept saying, like Notre Dame was doing a lot of stuff for their tight ends to change the gaps and move the gaps and fool and outnumber the Buckeyes, and it didn't work. And so this is like a free-flowing defense that was working even as things were changing. And so that tells you that it's good. And it wasn't just that Notre Dame ran exactly where the linebackers were and the safeties were. It's not that, because things were moving around. There was motion, so they had to move, and new gaps were created, and they maintained those gaps, and they had that integrity in their fits. And I think that's all extremely positive. That to me is a well-coached, well-designed defense. And I asked Perry Eliano about it afterwards. Like, this is a physical offense that you're playing, and you were able to do that with your 3 safeties. You didn't have to bring in a third linebacker, and he talked about how proud he was that his guys were so tough, and he made Notre Dame feel them, basically. Or not, he didn't, but the safeties made Notre Dame feel them. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Wisconsin, because this was one of those games where we thought, will they just stick with the nickel the entire time? And they didn't even go a heavy nickel with Court Williams or anything like that. Tanner McAllister played the entire game. And, I am also interested to see what he does, because they had nothing for him. They didn't have enough receivers to really attack him, and they didn't have a slot receiver like Michigan will have, or like Michigan will have. You know, as you said, Tom, there's not a lot of guys out there. I don't think it's fool's gold at all. One of the other areas that I wanted to discuss is the Josh Proctor situation. And to call it a situation, no, it's that overblows it. But it was a topic of conversation today with the coaches where he's out there, he starts, he misses the tackle and plays the rest of that series, and then comes back in one other time later on in the game on a 3rd and short. And so that could be demoralizing for a player. That could be enough to make him want to transfer mid-game, if you will. But, you know, Perry Eliano talked to him and you know, basically he said that he wanted to, the reason he pulled him and kept Lathan out there is he just wanted to calm Josh Proctor down. And then essentially I think Lathan is just playing so well, it's like, well, why would we pull him at this point? And then Proctor was back in the facility on Sunday watching film, back in the facility on Monday watching film, and they have talked to him, and Perry Eliano and Josh Proctor have talked. Josh Proctor is fine. It's one of these things where it could be a lot for somebody to have that happen to them. But I think it's a very positive sign that there's not that Perry Eliano would be like, well, you know, he was very upset. We haven't talked since the game. And, you know, it's not like he'd go into detail about this drama. But the fact that, yes, we have talked and we have explained things and he is fine. Like, this is, as, you know, Urban Meyer would say, life in a big city. But as Ryan Day also said, you know, we will need him and he will play. And I asked Ryan Day, was this a product of a more stringent policy against mistakes on the field, basically, or a product of having more depth, or all of the above? He's like, yeah, it's all of the above. But they also didn't want to just throw him under the bus. It's like, well, we've got a lot of guys. There's more depth, and you're going to see that. And they'll play more depth when they're not playing just 49 snaps a game. But just wanted to touch base on Proctor. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I would add to that is, you know, you said he and Eliano talked and sat down and talked. And Eliano said this was not like a special thing, that he really made a special effort to talk to Josh Proctor. He talks to all the guys after all the games and like sits down with them and kind of goes through stuff with them. So that was, you know, that was a routine thing. That was not well, Josh was very upset and therefore yada, yada, yada. I had the same thought after the game, especially after I saw the number of snaps he played and realized it was 5 on defense. I thought, oh boy, that's, you know, you wonder how he's doing with that, because, you know, he missed most of last season and you work back and all the rehab and all that stuff you have to do, and you come out and you're starting the game, and the first play you make a mistake and then whoop, you're off the field a couple snaps later, and then you really don't get back in. And this is, I mean, you talk about life in the big city. They like Josh Proctor a lot. They view Josh Proctor as a real potential impact player. He has been, you know, he was a really, really elite safety prospect out of high school in Oklahoma, and, you know, was one of those guys who, yeah, I think the first spring he was in Columbus, we were talking about him a lot as, you know, someone who you kept hearing his name from players and other, you know, for other players and coaches about how he was really going, you know, sideline to sideline and making plays on balls and intercepting a lot of passes in the practice. And then he played some in 2019, some in 2020, got hurt in 2021. And now 2022, it's like this is his 4th year. I'm sure he's thinking, this is my contract year. So he wants to be out there. You know, I think it's good that he's recognizing that, you know, that you're going to not necessarily have a straight line. You may sit a little bit, but there's going to be other opportunities. There will, you know, someone will get hurt, or they will just end up having, you know, there will be situations where you're playing, or he may just go back in and be the starter at some point. I mean, those are all possibilities. It also strikes me kind of that perhaps this is a 4th year maturity where you've kind of seen this happen to other guys, and then they can, you know, this is not immediately you were being exiled to Siberia. Like, yeah, you're going to play. You didn't play that much at the end of the last game. So I feel like he's someone who I would, I would still be buying Josh Proctor stock probably. I think that, you know, he's going to have plenty of opportunities to contribute in a really meaningful way this season for this team.
I finished my questioning to Ryan Day by saying, well, even if this wasn't a message that you guys sent, do you think it was a message that got received? And he's like, well, you'd have to ask the players. I'm assuming it is a message that was received well or not, but when you see a guy miss a tackle and basically that was it, it's, that's pretty loud, and I think it's loud enough for Josh Proctor to understand. But enough harping on that. I was impressed with Perry Eliano, a very, very confident guy, and I think that's just who these defensive coaches are. Honestly, like just confident dudes. And as Perry Eliano said at one point, he's like, "We're pros. Like we're not worried on the sideline, and the team reflects their confidence. The team sees it in them, and it's like, well, if they're not worried, I'm not going to be worried." I was really, it was interesting that when he was asked, what was the game plan going in for tight end Michael Mayer? You guys did a really good job. And they said, we just studied his tendencies and knew exactly where he would be every play and where he was going. And I've heard that said about Ohio State offenses in the past. We've heard, defensive players say, well, we knew what to expect. We knew where things were going. I don't know that it was recent past, but we've heard players say that and coaches say that. And it's like, wow, that's really telling. But this, I don't know that we've heard that from Ohio State coaches much in the past. And that's another thing that makes me think, you say this defense is fool's gold. I don't know that it is, Tom, because they're digging, they're able to, just talk about tendencies, and obviously they're always looking for tendencies, but when, they 5 catches for 32 yards for Notre Dame's best offensive player, and knowing where he was going, where he would be, and knew enough to be like, well, he's going to stop right here at the sticks, and Lathan Ransom's going to hit him, or Ronnie Hickman's going to hit him. Like, they were very, very confident, and the team reflected that confidence that the coaches had. And when, as Jim Knowles said after the game, then you can go to the film and see it. It's like, you just look at all of this stuff that works perfectly if you just you study, you understand the defense, and you trust what you've been taught and what you know.
Yeah, and that Lathan Ransom hit that you mentioned there right at the sticks, that was a third down play kind of deep in Notre Dame's own end. And Lathan Ransom came up and hit him, and Lathan Ransom is probably giving up, 40 pounds to Michael Mayer, maybe more than that? It might be more than that. And Eliano was asked, like, how do you do that? How do you hit someone so much bigger than you? And, physics seems to suggest that they should be the one who are knocking you over, and instead you're knocking them over and driving them back. And he said it was a combination of Coach Mick, heart, and desire, which, okay, I suppose if you have those three things, that would help. And, that's also, that just kind of is right in line with what we've heard about Lathan Ransom all year. That he has just been battling through this and just has been so focused on getting back, getting healthy, working in the facility. Eliano said he would just go in there and, like, in the summertime, there's no one else around. He knew they could count on Lathan Ransom during the summertime because he would be on the indoor by himself working out, doing drills. And Eliano said, I would just watch from afar. He didn't have to do it, so that means he had a desire, was motivated. He just works. It didn't surprise me what he did Saturday because he's been seeing it. So, that's one of the guys you had on that you saw on Michael Mayer. You mentioned Hickman, Ronnie Hickman. We can get to Ronnie Hickman in a minute, but Cam Brown was on him a couple times. There was one where Mayer made an incredible catch over Brown, but there was another one where Cam Brown broke up a pass on third down that was intended for Mayer, kind of along the sideline. So yeah, they had a bunch of different guys on him, and they all were able to do the job, and that's Notre Dame's best receiving threat, and potentially someone you're going to be hearing about as an All-American, and someone who's potentially a little bit of a mismatch for all three of those guys in different ways. So, that's another reason, Tony, why I think it's probably a little bit offensive that you would consider this defense fool's gold, just because you've got all those guys in the secondary who are making that kind of a play against that kind of a player.
Fair. Speaking of offensive, you said Coach Mick, heart and desire, and I immediately think sounds like a cologne. Coach Mick's heart and desire. And I'm thinking that it's made with real bits of Coach Mick, so it's good.
Just smells like sweat.
That's musk,
sweat,
Tom.
And mat drills.
Smells like pain. One last thing, and we'll get out of here. Ryan Day was asked if he liked opening up against a team like Notre Dame, where you start the season with a big game, And he said, today, you're asking me today? Yes. You asked me on Friday? No. I like it. I like starting the season with a bang. And then now you've got a couple weeks to decompress from that before you have another big game. Because when, like, even starting at Minnesota, starting at Indiana, I consider those big starts as well, like big games, conference games on the road. I much prefer that as opposed to a Florida Atlantic season opener in like 2019, I think that was, where, yes, it's here, but everybody's home and leaving by the fourth quarter. Like, I think, obviously you're not going to do it every season, but I like opening with games like this, obviously. Who wouldn't? But what do you think?
I mean, I can see how coaches would absolutely hate it. I mean, how many times have we heard you improve the most between the first game and the second game? So coaches want to have that one game of teaching, one game of film to teach off of, and all of that. But, the thing is, the other team is in the same boat. How often does, when it's raining, Ryan Day says, well, both teams are going to play in it, or the field is bad, or both teams have been playing it. Well, it's week one for both teams. So, I think you kind of set that aside. Playing a game week one, if you win, like, great, you have, that is going to be something that when we're looking at college football playoff stuff 3 months from now, that's going to be on the Ohio State quality wins list. You know that already. You have one of those banked. If you lose, that's a time when it's like, it makes it much easier to write it off. It's like, well, it was week one. I mean, that was a long time ago. So, it doesn't hurt you probably as much as it would if this was, a September 20 whatever game. Like next year they play at Notre Dame. Ohio State plays at Notre Dame. I think it's week 3. And, that's still early, but it's, okay, you're a little further into the season. It's a little more recent. It's a little harder to kind of write that off. So I do like, just the buzz around town last year and the buzz around town on Saturday in the lead up to the game and during the game. It was, you had the opening week excitement. You had the big opponent excitement. Like, that was everything all wrapped up in one. Because it was week one, you had all the former NFL guys there. Like, that whole thing, that really turns it into something of a spectacle. So, yeah, I like that a lot, but I understand why coaches would not necessarily want to do that. I did mention Ronnie Hickman earlier, so did want to bring this up. Perry Eliano was asked, was that kind of like a perfect performance? Did he grade out perfectly? And he said, yeah, Ronnie can play better. There's always room for improvement, but he has really stepped up his game preparation, really understands what to look for out there. And, he's someone who, on a defense that was full of guys who last year you kind of went, did this person have a great season? Like, there were not a lot of hard, firm yeses. Ronnie Hickman was a firm yes on had a good season last year, and certainly seems like he's on his way to having potentially a better season this year. And he's another one where, when was the last time you heard anyone say anything bad about Ronnie Hickman in the program? I don't know that I can remember hearing anything negative about him since he's gotten there, basically, other than was hurt the first year, which is like, that's not really a character flaw. So yeah, he's just one of those guys that just everyone has nothing but good things to say about him, which, at some point that starts to mean something.
Well, and Lathan Ransom is following that same line, somebody that was spoken very highly of as a true freshman in 2020, and you're seeing that now. And so those two guys, certainly played well, and you would expect them to continue to play well, as this non-fool's gold defense is driven by the safeties, which I'm the first person to say that this is a safety-driven defense. Tom, I don't know if you've heard, but they're certainly driving very well, this defense. That will then, I think, do it. Do you have anything else that you wanted to touch on? We've got stuff that we can talk about in the next show and the following shows. Anything else immediate?
Yeah, I'm scrolling through my notes. It looks like I think we've kind of covered enough. And good news, it's the season, so we've got another one of these coming tomorrow. So if we missed anything today, wait 24 hours and we'll be back again.
Yes, we will. So want to thank you all for joining us. Reminder that we are at BuckeyeHuddle.com. You can find us there. Tom's photo gallery from the Notre Dame game is there. Spectacular shots, some nice night experience environment, some fireworks. People like fireworks, and there's a ton of stuff there. And just anytime you have Ohio State and Notre Dame on the same field, kind of makes the photographer's job easy. I'm not going to say anything about that, Tom, but pictures kind of take themselves, if you know what I'm saying. Am I wrong?
Yeah, that's what auto mode on the camera is. Just like it just does everything for you. It's like a self-driving car.
Yeah, it's like the autopilot on an airplane. You punch the button, and then this inflatable photographer just blows up and starts taking pictures. Yeah, it's a quite a visual. Anyway, that will do it for this episode. Reminder to subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Just search Buckeye Huddle there. You'll find us. And plenty of videos, and hit the bell to be notified whenever we drop stuff like this show today. So thank you all, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.